Welcome to Insight class, which is First Presbyterians, where First Presbyterians' identity, faith, and values meet today's world. And we are continuing to do our Insight classes on Zoom, of course, and this session is being recorded so that we can put it on our YouTube channel as well. And we typically get anywhere between 10 and 12 people that participate after the fact using YouTube. So that seems to be working okay. We are in the midst of a series on ethical and moral choices at work, and have had a series of people from the Cedar Rapids area in different professions come and talk to us about ethical and moral choices at their work. And today we are very excited to have Autumn Pino, who is the principal of the Roosevelt Creative Corridor Business Academy here in Cedar Rapids. Autumn and I got a chance to talk a little bit, and she was astonished that she's now been there 10 years at Roosevelt and has been 18 years as a principal. Originally, Autumn is from Independence, Iowa. Some of us know her husband, Alex Pino, who's the executive director of YPN, formerly known as the Young Parents Network. Autumn is, I hope, is going to mention something about Roosevelt being selected as a magnet school of distinction and what that means. But one other thing I'd like to say is that the church is live streaming its service this morning at 10. So it will go as long as Autumn would like to go, but we do have a hard stop at 10 minutes to 10 so that people can move over and attend the live stream service this morning if they would like to. So with that, I'd like to welcome you, Autumn. Thank you for joining us this morning, and look forward to the class.
Well, first of all, I'm happy to be here, and I realize that my presentation is not, it should be second to God. So the next service is more important than this. Also, I just want to add before I share my presentation that I do feel honored that you asked me to come and do these things, because sometimes I think when you are in a profession or doing service or trying to serve the community well, you almost feel more humbled when somebody thinks you know something and have something to share. So thank you for that. The other thing I'd like to add is I am amazed with your church or congregation, how you engage in this process. I think our world would be a better place if more churches approach things this way, about looking at either divergent opinions or different perspectives. And so it's just amazing that people join in for this kind of learning. And I just commend you for that, for what it's worth, because I'm just, a principal in town, but I really feel that way. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we think it's going to work because it did last time. And I'm thinking everybody can see it. Is that correct?
Yes, looks good.
Okay. So again, just want to thank you for inviting me here today. I loved the topic when we were talking about ethical and moral choices at work. I feel like that's something that I'm extremely passionate about. And I do think that you're tested more, especially when you serve underrepresented groups. I think it calls on you in different ways. It tugs at your heart in different ways. And the desire and demand to have good character and do right by people, I think, surfaces even more. So I appreciate, again, the opportunity. I'm going to click here. So the question I would ask you is, how are we doing today? Because it's 2020, and I think about all the things we've been through. And one of the things I often say to staff is, how we feel today and in the moment determines how we show up for others. So I don't know if anybody wants to answer that question. It can be rhetorical, but when we think about how are we today, does anybody want to respond to that?
I find that I'm focused on what's happening at the moment. And I think this is true of a lot of people. We forget that there will be a world after COVID, and it'll be
Absolutely.
more than just bars and restaurants and vacations.
Mhm. Absolutely.
I think we lose track of the fact that in the grand scheme of things, what's been going on for the last 9 months is just a blip on the radar, and there's a much larger world that we need to be concerned with.
And it was so neat. One night when I was talking to my 11-year-old son, and he asked me to lay in bed with him because he just his heart wasn't peaceful. He just felt kind of anxious and agitated and that sort of thing. And so I just laid with him, and he said, "Mom, can I talk to you about a couple things?" And one of the things he said to me was, "This whole COVID thing is in his head a lot, and it's it impacts how he felt about engaging in social events, sports, which now we're not doing, but also thinking about and anticipating school." And we were laying in bed, and he said, "Can I hold your hand?" And I said, "Well, of course, because all moms know this, right? We'd love to freeze our kids in time and have those moments, because someday we won't have that anymore. Plus, that'd be a little strange later on as an adult, right?" And so he said, "Can I hold your hand?" And I said, "Of course you can hold my hand." And he said to me, "Mom, when I hold your hand, I feel like everything is right and all right with the world." And I kind of just froze in that moment, because what we need to keep in mind is the healthiest of people, right? The kids that are well adjusted, the families that have resources or don't have resources, right? Everybody's going through this. And then you couple that in our area with the derecho, and you think about all that our community's been through. And so we don't know everybody's personal story, right? When we meet them on the street or even a coworker, we don't know what they're going through. And so it's just really interesting for us. For example, we're transitioning back to school in person on Monday. And at the Friday Zoom or Google Meet staff meeting, we talked about how are we going to show up for the kids, because they deserve that. But I really believe this. I have on here, let's face it, our influences, experiences, and beliefs shape who we are, right? And in the moment, how we feel impacts how we interact with others. So I thank you for sharing that too today. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of background, because when we talk about experiences, beliefs, and all of that shapes who we are, I'm just going to kind of talk through what has shaped me, and hopefully it will be interesting and not too drawn out and boring for you. Were you going to say something? I thought somebody was going to say something. Anyway, so I grew up in Independence, Iowa. Most of you know about Independence, Iowa, right? There's not a lot to do there, but it's a charming little place. I had two sisters, still do. And my parents grew up in Independence, and they're still there. So it's very much a part of who I am. I'm a small town girl at heart. What we did for fun was ride our bikes and go to the pool. It was a pretty simple time. I would say also probably for fun in high school, we went to Pizza Hut and went to Walmart, probably for some excitement, and sometimes drove to Waterloo for entertainment. But I bring this up because in that small town, one of the things that I took away from that experience was the community rallied for each other. Independence is a place that floods. We all know that, right? And so I remember those clear moments of the community rallying together, and my family really pushing that idea of serving others and thinking about how important it is to take care of each other. I would also say, growing up in a small town, everybody knows your business. So that also kept me in good standing, probably because I was always trying to be on my best behavior. My mom would always say, "Autumn, if you're not careful, you'll lose babysitting jobs." And that was her way of keeping me on track. But there's something to be said about the hard work mentality, the rallying together as a community and serving others. And that has always stuck with me. My mom also used to say, you can be anything you want to be. So it doesn't matter where you come from. You just need to work hard and think about others before yourself. And so if you want to be president of the United States, Autumn, go for it. And so I think those are all things that were good things planted in me growing up. I attended Loras College. What a place. It was such a good experience for me, because it's there that I learned about leadership, and college is such an important time to figure out who you are as a person. I'm grateful to so many mentors and leaders there. Jim Collins, the college president now, he was a vice president when I was in school, and he was a fantastic mentor and always talked to me about sphere of influence and using my values to drive leadership. And so I'm grateful. There were so many mentors and great professors that caused me to think. I had a professor there that had a lot of moxie, and it was Dr. Bowerly, and she used to say, Autumn, on this paper, you're getting 99%. Why are you settling? And so then somehow I was crazy enough to go back and try to seek more. And it was really about the revision and the learning experience and the feedback to improve. And then this is a funny one. So at Loras, I met my husband, Alejandro. He couldn't believe I was including this, right? He is from Cedar Rapids, but grew up in Lima, Peru until the age of 11. When he came to Cedar Rapids, he ended up attending St. Pius. He ended up going through the Catholic system, and he ended up at Loras. And so I bring that up because some of you can relate to this, right? When you marry, there's some influences there too, right? That shape us, and you grow together, and you think about how you want to raise your own kids. And so obviously he's an important part of my life. I'm trying to get it to go here just a second. Something sensitive in my computer right now, so I'm going to try something different. Here we go. Okay, so talk about key drivers that influence and shape me. When you look at these pictures here, Lily is my 8th grader, and she is 13 years old, and Oliver is 11. And when I think about leadership, I will be honest, I think more about Lily as I lead as a woman at a school or in the community. And I think about teaching her those same things that my mom taught me about you can be anything you want to be, that you should stand for something, that you can have good balance. And I hopefully am modeling that for both of my kids, that you can try to lead and serve others and try to do good for the community, although I'm just one blip on the radar in the community. I will say I want them to know that, right? The power of thinking of others first. Lily, to give you a little bit of background, Lily's not one that loves school, let's just put it that way. But she's the one that will show up at school and do what she's supposed to do. And I've been told so far that she's still kind and that she's getting her work done and her grades are good. And she just got Student of the Month actually this month. And when I told her, her jaw dropped because she said, that's interesting, because she's not one that's passionate about school, but she's creative and she loves to sing. She lives for singing. And Oliver loves sports. He absolutely loves sports. He loves being a leader on the field. His favorite sport is soccer. He loves to build. He's been doing a lot with getting wood and nails and actually building things on his own, which is pretty amazing. And the other day he said he wanted to go kick field goals, and I didn't have time to take him, nor did his father. So he built an actual field goal out of wood in the backyard and had us come out and said, now I'm going to kick some field goals. So he's determined. So we've tried to instill these things in our kids. And I will say, as a leader, these are things that are really interesting, right? When you come home and you face your own kids and you say to yourself, am I proud of the work I've done today? I think about the questions they ask me and how they question the world. And all of that then inspires me to be a better leader, inspires me to be a better human being. And so I wanted to share that with you today because I think it's another dimension when you are a mother or a father or a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle, and how that shapes maybe how you look at things and how you want to serve others. So currently I'm at Roosevelt Creative Corridor Business Academy. I will say in my experiences as an administrator, this is the place I've probably most fallen in love with. And maybe that's why I've stayed so long. But Roosevelt has provided the opportunity for us to really dig in and to do really right by kids by really reinventing school on behalf of kids. So we do all project-based learning and blended learning. And this wasn't an easy journey. And some of you have heard a little bit about this before, but it took a lot of paradigm shifts to get there. But our leadership team and our people around us at school knew that this was best for kids to engage students. And so it's been quite the journey. But I made it its own slide to say, when we think about things that inspire us, and I talk about our experiences and our beliefs that shape us, or specific events, this school has shaped me more than any other experience I've had as a leader. And part of it is because of the diverse representation. And part of it is there's been pushes for me internally to say we can do more. We know that what we're providing was, good initially, but we knew kids deserved an amazing experience. So we keep striving for that every day. So I've shared this a little bit in the past for those of you that have participated before, but these are the demographics at Roosevelt. It's different this year because we've lost some students because of the big storm, right? The big storm in Cedar Rapids. We have several families displaced. The families you were seeing on the news in the apartments were many of our families. So we're still having some challenges of relocating some of these families and providing what they need. But you can see that it's a diverse population. And every day that I come to school, I feel honored and blessed to serve them. So one of the things I think that's really important is I have tried to, I'm imperfect as a human, but I've tried to live by this mantra of leadership is not about me power. By transposing two letters, you can see it's really about empowering others. And so often I think about what does that look like on a day-to-day basis? What does that look like during a hallway interaction? What does that look like when we're talking about students self-advocating and working hard to get what they need? What does it look like when I'm talking to a parent who maybe has leaned on us a lot and we're trying to empower them to feel like they have some control at home, that they have some influence? Trying to give strategies and support, and thinking about the way we empower our community to understand who we serve and to understand the needs of our population. One of the things that I want to touch on and holistically is this concept of servant leadership. And servant leadership for me, I did put into an acronym. And so I'm going to walk through that. So you'll notice that I have indicated that by the colored letter on the slide. But servant leadership to me is the epitome of how we need to approach moral and ethical dilemmas at work. The reality is if we think about it from a servant standpoint, we're really never steered wrong. So as a servant leader, I think about the shift in thinking. And oftentimes at school, we talk about that from proving to improving and from present to possibility. So for those of you that are leaders, whether it's in your church or a community organizer or at work, the reality is it is our responsibility as leaders to help people see what's possible. That's really, really important. And sometimes that means that we're challenging each other a little bit because we think about what we've always known is what we've known and it's kind of working. But if we forget to lead with that foresight, that can be detrimental to any organization or a community. So we talk a lot about thinking about what's present, but thinking about what's possible and how we take the traditions and what we value of today and still adapting those to something for the future that's even more special. So I think it's really important also that we're thinking about not just going through the motions and whatever it is in life, but thinking about your compelling case for the why behind it. So for those of you that are joining in today or taking on a specific charge in your church or in your organization or in your business, think about the why behind that. Why do we do it? Why do we invest in it? Why does it even matter? And I think that's critical because when you find your why, when you think about why you're spending your time doing that or why you have chosen this as an investment, it really does change the landscape on how that looks, how strategy looks, how outcomes look, how you try to inspire others, and how you push for others to believe in that cause that's so important to you. Sometimes people talk about their own why in life. Now I don't know, am I middle-aged now? I don't know how old that is, right? But I have talked to a lot of people, whether it's my parents' friends or former colleagues, and they talk a lot about that retirement age and how they have to revisit their why, revisit their purpose. I don't know if anybody on screen's gone through that before, but what an interesting revisiting of purpose. Does anybody want to share anything about that? How have you had to navigate your own why?
I'll share. I retired from teaching school 6 years ago. I was an art teacher at my last school was opening Viola Gibson.
Awesome.
I taught at Roosevelt 2 years and loved it back
Awesome.
in the 90s. Yeah, I opened a little summer camp and I felt that was immediately I had to address the why. Why, what would I do? What was my purpose now? And I started a little summer camp where I see 10 kids for a week, a morning of camp, all week long, and I do it 3 times a year. And I know I always told the kids, if I didn't do my own art, if I didn't work with art, not just present lessons, I think I'd blow up, and they would laugh. But I just said it's consuming. And so, it needed to be done. Like maybe your son needs to play sports and your daughter needs to sing.
Yes, absolutely.
You need to do these things when you are, I think, maybe a mathematician needs to do math, but when you're creative, I think if you don't have an outlet, it's very, very frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Tom's comment about being in the moment is so true. And I fight it all the time. I've been doing some artwork with trees because of a derecho. So, it's like you just have to kind of look past, not turn bad into good. It's not that simple. But I think the why is a constant thing, and why in that, like with our leadership stuff, right now I'm doing something where I'm helping with online things. And I said to my person I was lining up, I said, it's so often we do things that it seems like, what's this about? Why am I doing it? And it's because we miss people. This is all about videotaping regular members and we're seeing each other. I feel so strong about the why. It's so clear. So when a why, and I haven't thought about putting it in that term why, but when it's clear what I'm doing and its purpose, it's just so much easier, so much more joyful, and a happy phone call.
Love it.
So.
And I wasn't planning on sharing this, but I think it's fitting. My mom went through some terrible medical experiences at the age of, I'll probably get this wrong now, maybe it was 61. She's 67 now. And it was about the time she was going to retire. And there was a tumor embedded in her brainstem that was shocking to all of us because she would walk 5 miles a day, a speed walk. She's the type that you'd walk with her and then you'd have to bend down to tie your shoe and she's about a mile down because she doesn't wait for you. And she was a go-getter, and we had some devastating things happen where we had to beg. We went to multiple institutions for them to do the surgery because it was too risky. And all of our family rushed her by ambulance from Waterloo to Mayo, which is pretty dramatic. And we all went in there and begged them to take the surgery, and they did, which was amazing. But my mom had to learn to walk again, go to the bathroom. She was cathed, when she came home. So she's had to rebuild her life. And so one of the things that's been really challenging for us as a family is when we say we're so grateful you're still here, my mom's response initially, she's moved past this, was, but it's not the same for me. The quality of life has shifted dramatically. And so we've talked a lot about purpose, right? And in her situation, we talked about repurposing. Because the reality is, as different things happen in our lives and we're faced with different challenges, we have to adapt and adjust, and sometimes it stinks. And so in her situation, she's had to really revisit that pretty hardcore every day in the mirror because of the challenges she's faced now being disabled. Her independence was taken to a certain degree. So we can find our why in our personal life, and we can find our why in public ways and professional ways, right? And so I just bring that up because I don't think we take enough time to spend time kind of lingering in that question. And I think COVID has allowed us to do that a little bit more than we would have before. So when I think about my compelling case for why, these are some of the students I've served over the years. And I will tell you, when I look them in the eyes, I find my why. And for that, it gives me chills when I say that out loud. But for that, I'm grateful to these kids because they're just showing up to school and they don't realize that that has an impact on me personally as a leader. But I often will talk to a student or do a focus group with students and say, thank you for making me a better principal. And sometimes I say, thank you for making me a better human being. Because when we think about all the needs and kind of just this idea of shaping lives, right? How is that not inspiring? And how does that not feel like an awesome task? So I know I'm failing because there's no way I'm doing that for every student, but the same is true for the adults that I work with. We try to do a lot of coaching and support for the adults because that's doing right by kids. And in the realm of leadership, it's my hope that people don't go into this for power, but to grow people, to grow humans. So I'm hoping I've been somewhat impactful along the way, but I'm still a work in progress. So the second part of servant leadership, the E, I always say, I think it's important that we embrace. So that means embracing feedback and opportunities and change. And one of the things that I had somebody I worked with in the past tell me is they never thought they'd be at this place or they never thought they'd work at the next place. And the reason they ended up where they were is because they were open to opportunities. It's that I'm tapping you on the shoulder because I see something in you, because I believe in you. Do you want to give this a try? And on the flip side, there have been times in my own professional career or personal life where I've received feedback and I didn't always love it. I think we can all relate to that, right? Where there's probably a grain of truth to that, and I probably need to revisit that or get better at it. And so the other piece to this is change. Yuck, right? Like I like change in most aspects of my life, right? But there are things we don't like to change that felt super comfortable. And there's a big change at the Pino house that my kids are trying to push for, and that's a dog. Okay, so when you think about that, for me, I'm not a dog person. So I'm working through that to decide if I can come around for the sake of the family. But I think this is COVID brain that they all have, that they just think we need to love something or love on something. And they're telling me they're going to take responsibility. But sometimes as a mom, I feel like, well, if everybody could pick up their rooms, right, and put the dishes back, then maybe I'd consider a dog. They've assured me for the rest of my life, it will be perfect if I get them a dog. They'll do everything I've ever asked of them. They'll never fight again was the last thing they told me this morning. So the thing is, though, I don't know if that change is all bad, and I need to reflect and think about that. So that's a personal life thing. Change and opportunity when we're in a business or in a leadership position in a church. We have to think about some of those things. Are we leading change for change's sake? Or are we doing that because it's best for the organization? Are we ourselves open to change? Because as a leader, if we're not open to change, how are we helping others see what's possible? So all three of those things for me are important because sometimes opportunities come up when you weren't ready for them, when you didn't have a desire for them, but you have to pause and decide, is that what's best for me, for the organization, for my family, whatever the situation is. And oftentimes, if we're trying to be selfless, we have to be careful because sometimes we don't take opportunities because we're thinking about how it might inconvenience everybody else. But being a servant leader, we do put people first, but there are times we need to pause on our own growth too. So I often think about that, and I think about how am I doing with embracing all of those areas. It's really important. And then for R&V, I said reflect and vision cast. I feel like it's really important for me constantly, and I hope all of you feel the same way, where you're constantly reflecting either on experiences in your life, maybe how you've treated someone, how you've led the last meeting you were at. I think interactions with people and humans in general are important, and thinking about that, thinking about how I've made somebody else feel. Again, I'm imperfect at it, but I think it's important. Maybe it's reflecting on your own relationships. I know of somebody right now that's going through a difficult time because their daughter is making decisions that that mother would not make. And she's still healthy, but she took a different path in life. And so she talked to me one day and said, am I overreacting? Am I being difficult? And I said, well, maybe, but but the reality is you got to work through this, right? Because we sometimes have an intention or a plan or a direction that goes a different way. And we just have to step back and think about that a little bit and think about, do we help coach and empower and guide, or do we just get mad and we say, I'm done and I'm frustrated? So just reflection is so important. But I do think in organizations, I think a lot of times we're lacking vision casting. And that's leading with foresight. And I'm not perfect at this either, but it's something I'm constantly doing. And sometimes it gets us in trouble at Roosevelt, if I'm being really vulnerable with you, because we're usually thinking further than the system has thought yet, because we're every day with kids and it's a reality about their needs. And so we push the envelope. I think it's well known that I'm the type of leader. I don't know if this is funny or not because I'm giggling about it, but sometimes I'm known as the leader that will drive us just to the edge of the cliff, whatever we can get by with, just push a little bit because we know it's right by kids. And so there's a little bit of seeking forgiveness later. But our leadership team is smart and they're passionate, and we vet ideas and we usually do the right thing. I think so far we've done the right thing for kids, and we feel better because the work's been harder than ever. But at the same time, we feel like the outcomes are so strong. This is the grossest picture I could share with you, but I got permission from my mom to show this. This is my curling iron. Okay. It's disgusting, right? It's dirty and gritty and bumpy and messy. And I show that because this honestly is symbolic to leadership. I'll switch this slide soon because it's kind of gross to look at. But it's been covered in hairspray and it's murky and it's messy and it's just gunky, but that's sort of how leadership goes, right? And so there's a running joke with our staff that they know that my thinking time is when I curl my hair. Some people, walk their dog to think, or might think in the shower or go for a long walk. I curl my hair and it's my thinking time. But I will say, I feel like this is symbolic to how things go, in that leadership is so important and there's so many drivers and things you want to accomplish, and hopefully always through a shared leadership model, but it's not easy. In fact, sometimes it's gunky and gross, but you always come out of it better if you're doing right by the people you serve. I often joke too about, there are times every year that I wish I went back to retail. I used to work at Old Navy as a beginning teacher, and there was so much satisfaction in folding jeans, because I'd say they're linear and they're straight and nobody's arguing about anything, right? And you could have a sense of accomplishment. And I used to step back and look at those jeans and say, yeah, that looks really good. That feels really fulfilling, because those were simpler times. But the reality is the work we do is important. In the A of servant leadership, I talk about being authentic. And the reason I say that is I really believe if you stand for something, then the right people will stand behind you, or better yet, around you and surround you. So I don't know what you use in the organizations you lead, or just in your own gut checks as a human being, but I have 3 check marks I always use when making a big decision. And I'm using this professionally now. So the first one is it good for kids? Let's ask ourselves that as an organization. And we talk about that. Is it good for kids? If I feel like it's good for kids, then I move on to the next check mark. And is it good for the organization? Does the institution thrive if I'm making this decision? If the answer is yes, then I go to the last one, which is it ethical? Does it feel right? What is my gut telling me? But really, is it ethical? If I mark all 3 of those, I have a commitment to myself that I can sleep that night. Doesn't mean the next day will be fun, but the decision or the choice that was made or what we have to push, but that's what I use. And it has served me well. So the A in servant leadership to me would be to be authentic. I have this poster that I hang in my office, and it's the first, it still has the little tack marks you can see in the corners, because it's just a frame poster and the frame doesn't fit the poster. But you can see that the little tack marks are up there. And it was the first poster that I hung as a teacher. And this idea of surrounding yourself with who you want to be, it's funny because that's good advice for middle schoolers, but it's also good advice for adults. So I always keep this as a reminder of my first teaching experience, which was at Prairie, by the way, here in town. And I think about what that means symbolically in so many ways. The N for servant leadership for me is never underestimate the talents and skills of the people around you. I am blown away on a daily basis about a simple conversation I could have with a teacher, and then I learn how that teacher could totally enhance the next thing that we're working on during a professional development session. These are some of the books that we've used. We read An Innovator's Mindset at school, and it talks about taking the beliefs and talents and skills of each other to make something better and to make an organization better. But I'm blown away at how when you call on each other, how powerful that is. Another question just to throw out there, and I'm just going to keep this one rhetorical just for the sake of questions at the end, if there are any, but are we able to see the capacity in others? And I mean everybody we come into contact with, but it could mean those that we lead, and it could mean our own kids, right? Or our own grandkids. Do we see their capacity? And I love this picture, right? We have this cat, and at face value, it's a cat, but inside it's a lion ready to roar. And are we unleashing those talents, abilities, skills, all of those things and that people have right in them that we maybe aren't aware of? Are we allowing that to be unleashed? The T in servant leadership for me is to just be thankful. I call this my divine state of gratitude, and it's sort of corny, so I'm going to warn everybody. But when I'm walking around school and I'm thinking about the challenges we face, and I can give you a hot and heavy one. During the storm in August, we knew kids didn't have what they needed. And we also knew that there were some connection issues. We also, I'm trying to be cautious, but we're also a little concerned that our community wasn't quite rapid enough in the response. That's not blaming any single person, but we know in serving underrepresented groups, there were major concerns. And when I watched our staff rally during COVID to try to go door to door and provide the, to the needs and address those kids that were in apartments where their walls had completely come down and they're still trying to live there, I was in a divine state of gratitude because as a leader and hopefully a servant leader, I watched everybody around me rally together on behalf of others. This happens to me during the school day. This happens to me at home. Mothers and fathers, when you, whether it's grandkids as well, when you see your kids just sleeping, right? And it's all peaceful and you just kind of stay there frozen in that gratitude that you're so blessed. I do that at school when I'm working with our counselor and walking down the hall, and I just watch an interaction where teachers and counselors and staff are doing really right by kids. I just feel very grateful to be surrounded by good people. I think those moments are important because I think it's kind of what fills your own bucket and keeps you going and keeps you jazzed and energized about what you're about to do. So one of the questions through this process, and I am watching our time, was when does our work do good and when does our work fall short? So I'll keep this part brief, but when I look at these pictures of these kids, I could go person by person and think about how we did good for many or most and how we fell short as a school. And we're never satisfied. And so one of the things that we talk about as a staff, that no matter what, each and every day, we want to look our students in the eyes and we want to help them find value and help them find connection. And you're dang right, I'm gonna fight a little if I don't think they're getting what they need, whether it's from the district level, right? Decisions accidentally, I'm not saying anything would be intentional, or our community, we need to rally around the people we serve with best intention, supporting our community along the way, but not settling when things do fall short. And there's a couple people or a couple kids on the screen that I stay connected with because they need a little extra. And I'm happy to give the little extra, and I'm hoping that I can continue to influence and impact. So Jim Collins, for those of you that have read the book Good to Great, he has some great feedback. But what my favorite thing is when he talks about level 5 leaders. And level 5 leaders are, the top tier, the most amazing leaders, the ones that you're just kind of in awe of, that inspire you. And that could be different for different individuals. But I love this quote, so I'm just going to leave that up there for you for a minute. A great leader is humble. A great leader is also fearless, which is interesting. But they're fearless on behalf of the people they serve. So at the beginning, I said our influences, experiences, and beliefs shape who we are as a person, and they should shape our moral compass as a leader. I think it's really important that if we're aspiring to do good things for our community, if we're aspiring to be a good leader or a good partner, right, we should think about how the journey never ends in our own personal growth, how we look at the world around us, how we strive to serve, but our goal should be that our legacy doesn't either. And so if we built shared capacity and we've talked about our own beliefs and shared our beliefs and coached people up and tried to grow human beings as they grow us, then hopefully we do have a lasting legacy. So that's really all I have today. I don't know if anybody has questions.
Autumn, thank you very much. I have two questions.
Okay.
The first is 58 years old too old to actually attend Roosevelt and
Funny.
participate in it? Okay, that wasn't a serious question.
It could help you blend in the hallway. That'd be fine.
That would be lovely.
Everybody's wearing a mask, so you probably wouldn't stand out anyway.
Actually, my real question is, what challenges from a kind of an ethical perspective do you see now that maybe are different from when you first started as a teacher?
Yeah, so for me, it really is. I just think I'll use darn, right? Because this is a church setting. It's a darn shame that not all of our schools and all of our kids have the same access to resources. It's super frustrating. I mean, we're not a high profile building. We don't have an affluent population. So I feel like we have to work harder at getting things that we need. We don't have an affluent group doing PTA. Our building is beautiful, right, from the outside, and it's old and traditional, but there are aspects that are run down that we have to really keep up with and push for. I just feel like our kids deserve the same, if not a little more better, right? Because I'm always a champion of our own school. And I feel like there are times that, and I don't know where this always stems from, but I don't know. We don't always get our needs met, I don't think, well enough. I even think like sometimes the ratio of students to teachers should be different in our building than some of the other buildings. Just things like that. So I'm a little bit of a piranha at times, and our staff knows it. And it's on behalf of them and the kids. And, one time I remember saying something at the district level that was, I thought I even prefaced it with, this could be political and professional suicide, but I'm willing to risk it for kids. And the outcome was fine and it was positive, but I mean, it's putting yourself out there because it's the right thing to do. So there's a lot of things with resources, I'd say. And I would even say the post-derecho issues are still surfacing, and hotspots and other things for kids. So, and it's to no one person's fault, but it's still not okay.
Thank you. We probably have time for just one quick question. If there's another question.
All right, I'm going to jump in, just a quick one. The other day, I came across a class photo from my first school, actually my second school. I was struck that even after 45 years, I could still name most of the students in that picture. Of course, I was also struck by who's that really young looking guy in the middle of it. But my question is, do you think this is common with all teachers, that at least all the ones who stay with it for 45 years, that they can name students even from their earliest days?
Yeah, I think so. I think what happens to, or it's a last name or it's a story about that individual kid, because we talk about this a lot. I feel like our investment in our students is so much deeper than it probably was in the beginning years of teaching in other cultures I've been in. Yeah, one of the things that when we hire, and I don't want to take too long, but when we hire at our building, I'm a little unconventional. And so one of the things I'll say to a teacher candidate at the end is, and we ask a lot of questions related to mindset and things like that, but I say to them, which then gives them an option to think I'm crazy and ditch me or something, but I say, if I call you and you're the successful candidate for this position, I do not want you to accept this job unless you're going to love the kids the way I do. If you can't commit to that, please don't sign on. I don't care how well you know math. Don't do it. And sometimes I get like just a little bit choked up or chills. And I know they're probably walking away like, she's crazy. But that's how I feel. And I think through that process, our staff's used to me saying that now. Through that process, I think that's why we've built the capacity we have for love and care for kids, because that's what we're about, you know? So I'm hoping that you'd be able to, me as well, my first teaching job, although I taught behavior focus. I don't know if you're familiar with behavior focus and special ed, they're memorable after you have them. But I would hope that everybody takes the jobs so serious that every kid matters that much.
Hey, Leland, I think you were trying to ask a question, but maybe we're on mute. Maybe real quick.
Yeah, one of the challenges now with, you work with a really vulnerable population to catch up when they're so far behind now. I mean, it's been said across the country with that. These kids, they ever catch up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the thing about this is when people are approaching diverse issues, I remember I know you got to go. In the beginning years of my job here, I had a couple staff, that pushed back a little with me, which was fine. And we had some kids that actually was an African-American group of boys that were very gang affiliated. And so I was trying to provide them an opportunity to go to the University of Iowa for a trip to meet with some athletes, but also an academic coach there and different things. And one of the teachers said, well, don't you think they should earn this? And I said, I'm going to be honest with you. Every other time I would have said that, but these kids need more and different. And I think it's the same with academics. I think it's a matter of wrapping around a student, right? So we know we have a family that they're in dire conditions in their home, and mom has depression and hasn't gotten out of bed for, other than to go to the bathroom and things for like a year. And that's what that child's dealing with. So we're trying to wrap around support. And, for example, when we're back in person, she can stay after school if she needs to with a mask on with a teacher to get the extra love and support. So it's that kind of stuff where it's just having the capacity, right, to give everybody what they need. And it's super challenging, but we're trying because there are more skill gaps than ever. So one of the things that we've turned to is we're using a program too that progress monitors kids, and we can see their time on the screen and control their screen through Go Guardian, it's called. And so I know your wife would know what that is. But anyway, she's thriving because we're holding her accountable, but yet treating her as a human being that has a story. And that's the delicate balance of teaching these days, I think.
Thank you.
Autumn, thank you very much for
Absolutely.
joining us today. Really appreciate your presentation and your work in Cedar Rapids.
Yeah, absolutely.
Makes a
Well,
big
thanks
difference.
for your time. I appreciate everybody showing up. So thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'd like to say that next week we're going to be joined by Chad Proctor, who many of you know is a member of our congregation, who's also a hospice, and he is a nurse practitioner, and will be able to, I think, make a very nice presentation about ethical and moral choices that are made in that context. And I'd also like to invite everybody to leave this Zoom meeting and flip over to the link on the church website that has the live streaming service that's going to be going on starting in just about 6 minutes. So hope to see some of you there. Again, thank you, Autumn, and
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
bye-bye.
I was joking, we're like old friends every time I see you guys on screen or in person, so have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Matt.